October 2021. Welcome to the Bear Intel Brief. Please bear with the sound of rain on the tin roof. I think it's kind of enjoyable, and you may or may not be aware, but I am not in charge of the weather. If I was, I'd be a quadrillionaire, and we'd be having this conversation from my underground lair while I was stroking a cat on my lap, talking about sharks with lasers on their heads. Hello, everybody in the chat. Today we're going to talk about the global energy crisis that is looming, which is the best ever. Everybody loves a good looming crisis, isn't that correct? Midwest Mini Homestead, Liberty Micro Farm, Brian, Andrew, Old Devil Dog, Kratke Homesteader. I appreciate y'all. Thank you for being here. Please pay the fee. The fee is share this out to people that you think need to see it. That helps us greatly in our ongoing battle against the YouTube algorithmic robots. Additionally, I'm looking forward to, hopefully Friday, being able to do this back on the main channel, which is Bear Independent. So we have had new people come onto the show here, and at this channel, the Blue Collar President, you'll be finding this content, hopefully, assuming that YouTube lets us out of YouTube jail, on Bear Independent come Friday. Let's go, Brandon. DeKraken, I agree completely. Before we let's go, Brandon, let's go over here into OBS, hit this button, scoot over here, click on this, and start talking about the global energy crisis. 13 October 2021. Energy costs are being driven to record highs in Europe as winter looms closer each passing week. Despite plentiful natural gas resources, America is feeling the squeeze too. Forbes noted, quote, gas shortages in Europe and Asia are drawing more U.S. gas abroad as exports of liquefied natural gas, exacerbating market tightness here despite America's vast gas reserves. The EIA says that natural gas exports are up 41% from a year ago, end quote. In the United States, home heating costs have risen 180% in a single year, and the winter surge in demand hasn't yet hit the market. The consumer pressure is real. Prices are up, quantities on the shelves are down, and the rush to prepare for the holidays is already beginning to stir. High energy costs would be just one more vice grips. The best, you know what I'm talking about. Not to be confused with pump pliers, but vice grips with the spring load and the knob, and you lock it onto a nut. The vice-like grip on the wallets of the average consumer this winter, squeezing those in poverty harder than anyone. The U.S. is a major exporter of natural gas. Running out isn't a concern. However, supply and demand, the big they, will play with that. But in Europe and Asia, blackouts and manufacturing delays have become a major issue. Prices in Europe have risen 250% compared to the U.S. and British. The U.S. is 180%, and British factories that make chemical, paper, glass, steel, cement, and more will need to raise prices significantly to compensate for their soaring energy costs. Interestingly, quote, factories that make chemicals, end quote, include fertilizer plants, which means that the food industry has been scrambling to find enough carbon dioxide for stunning animals for slaughter, lest the production lines be forced to shut down. Basically, these factory processing plants use the CO2 to oxygen deprive the animals so that they're stunned and then they're killed. Great, and my computer's doing that thing where somebody, takes it over and the screen doesn't work. So this is going to be a great live stream. The food supply chain was already struggling due to shortage of butchers who can no longer immigrate easily due to Brexit. As of the 1st of October, the industry had a backup of about 120,000 hogs, and the British Meat Processors Association warned that pork suppliers would have to start culling animals if the issue couldn't be resolved. On the world stage, it may be worth noting that another country that's a major exporter of natural gas during Europe and Asia's time of need is Russia. Europe had been trying to free itself from reliance on Russia and pursue greener initiatives, but now after a low-wind summer, The Russian ambassador is urging the EU, as the Financial Times puts it, to, quote, mend ties with Moscow in order to avoid future gas shortages, end quote. Now remember, we've talked about this at length, ad nauseum here, that war at its most basic level is a game of resources, and we're going to continue to see resources tightening up. Whether that's naturally occurring or it is manufactured by they. As always, you have all of the relevant links here to this discussion that we're about to have in the description here on YouTube and on Patreon. So if you'd like to dive deeper into any of the articles we're going to discuss, you can just click the links in the description. That's also valuable because if Todd at YouTube gets a little feisty today, what I'm going to do is read these articles, offer my opinion on them, perhaps a modicum of editorializing, but everything I'm saying is being backed up by these articles that are published here 3 times a week on the Bear Brief. Also, please bear with me. I have a head cold, I think, and the amount of pressure that is in my dome currently exceeds what the dome is rated for, and thusly, my eyes, my ears, and my nose all feel like at any moment they might just pop off of my head. And so if that happens, take heart. I'm actually a giant Mr. Potato Head, and it'll be okay. From CNN.com, CNN Business. Gas prices skyrocket as the global energy crisis worsens. You know, let's make sure we still have a live stream. Do we have a live stream? We do have a live stream. What's up, Justin Ridlin, Peaceful Warrior? Bear with me. Yeah, you caught that. Fabulous. New York, CNN Business. The cost of energy was dirt cheap in the spring of 2020 as roads and airports sat nearly empty during the height of the COVID-19 pandemic. Energy demand is back today as the world economies reopen, but supply simply hasn't kept up. Now, see, the supply is there, comma. I think a lot of the businesses that are required in order to facilitate for the supply aren't willing to do certain things. And also, it is entirely possible to manufacture supply shortages in the face of demand to escalate prices. That's why U.S. oil prices have skyrocketed $120 since crashing to a negative $40 a barrel in April of 2020. U.S. oil prices finished above $80 a barrel on Monday for the first time in nearly 7 years. Let's go, Brandon. Crude gained 1.5% to end the day at $80.52. The last time oil closed above 80 was October 31st, 2014. All of this is leading to sticker shock for many Americans filling up at the pump. I put half a tank of fuel in one vehicle the other day and it was $52. Let's go, Brandon. The national average price for gasoline hit a fresh 7-year high of $3.27 a gallon on Monday, up by 7 cents in the past week alone, according to AAA. Gas has nearly doubled since bottoming at $1.77 in April 2020. High gas prices will only exacerbate elevated inflation. That is a key phrase right there. High gas prices will only exacerbate elevated inflation, squeeze the budgets of American families, and hurt President Joe Biden's political fortunes. He seems to be doing that well enough on his own. I don't think gas prices alone are going to catapult him into the direction of a president the people hate. I mean, for y'all sakes, let's go, Brandon. Let's go, Brandon. Natural gas prices have skyrocketed so much, especially in Europe and Asia, that power plants and factories may increasingly turn to a relatively cheaper fuel source for electricity, crude oil. And an recurring theme that we're going to see in today's discussion is that there was a push, and there will continue to be a push, for renewable energy as primary generation. And as I have said to you 1,000 times before, we meaning the population of planet Earth, do not have the capacitor technology to store energy from renewable generation in such a way that it can be used on demand. That's the beautiful thing about fossil fuels. Fuel oil, natural gas, coal can all generate power because they create heat, which creates steam, which turn turbines, which can be very finely tuned using a SCADA system to immediately match the output to the demand. They're incredibly good at scaling. They're not so clean, they're bad for Mother Earth. Well, they're way cleaner than they have been in years past, and they produce energy reliably around the clock. Unlike wind and solar, wind only makes power when there's wind. Solar only makes power when there's sun. So you need the capacitor technology, aka batteries, to store that energy. We don't have that yet. China has been working on that for a long time. There are certain American firms that are working on that, but we're not to the point where any of those solutions can be implemented on a grid scale. So what we're seeing, and we will continue to see throughout today's brief, is that there is a need for on-demand energy that cannot be met by renewable resources. This should not come as a shock to anybody, because not once has renewable energy thus far in the history of its existence been able to meet utility scale on-demand grid requirements. That capability does not exist, nor has it ever existed. The interesting take on this is, as has been reported on by others, specifically Forward Observer, the increase in far left domestic terrorists or environmental activists, I'm sorry I misspoke, who are demanding even more renewable energy and who are staunchly against the proliferation of more fossil fuels and nuclear power. You can't have your cake and eat it too. It's really hard to complain on Twitter when there's no power and no Wi-Fi. And that power and that Wi-Fi comes from fossil fuels and nuclear power. So, because of this, there's an increased demand for fossil fuels around the world, including in the United States, in Asia. Russia has a surplus of natural gas that they're trying to sell into Europe, which is creating some geopolitical concerns. So it's something to pay attention to here. It also ties into the concept of there will be a dark winter. From Forbes, rising energy poses big inflationary threat to the U.S. economy. Another thing that's happening is because the financial markets are so volatile is that investment firms are speculating on energy futures. And so that is also unnecessarily driving up the cost of power, of energy, for the end user, the residential consumer, the industrial consumer, the agricultural consumer. So these costs are having to be passed on. As the wholesale cost of power increases, the retail cost of power is going to increase as well. From Forbes, fears about inflation are rampant in Europe, where natural gas and power shortages are colliding with the onset of winter to drive energy prices to record-breaking levels. And as we're going to see, some of the costings in Europe are absurd. Mix in the effects of supply chain bottlenecks caused by the global pandemic, and you have a dangerous cocktail of rising prices and falling purchasing power of must-have energy products. And this falling purchasing power is something that I would advise every one of you to take stock of in your daily lives. Get the things you need to get now. Is the world going to end? I have no idea. Sooner or later, yes. It's prophesied. Whether you believe in the Bible, or you believe in the Mayans, or you believe in Gaia, or whatever, or you believe in nothing. You believe in the science. Okay, well, all things come to an end. The trajectory that we are on in an economic sense is not the type of trajectory that makes me personally feel comfortable holding a lot of assets in banks. I would rather have physical assets, tangible goods that I can lay my hands on as a repository for my own meager personal wealth that will weather the coming future chaotic economic times. And so as our falling purchasing power continues, things are going to cost more. And so if you can do yourself a favor by purchasing tangible goods and assets now at what is likely going to be a lower price now than what we will see in the future, that would be a good thing. That is something, I'm not telling you need to do this, but this is something that I am doing in my own life. We are putting tens of thousands of dollars into infrastructure, into our homestead, specifically on rainwater catchment, water storage, pressurization, distributed water, distributed electrical, and renewable energies, including solar and wind here on property. Because I would rather do that than look at some money in a bank account somewhere. To say nothing of the fact the IRS is also now looking at your money in your bank account as well. Back to the article. And while the situation in the United States is not as bad, only 180% cost increase rather than 250, consumers and investors can't afford to be complacent. Wall Street traders are watching what's happening in Europe and anticipating inflation. Oh, thanks, computer. Anticipating inflation will continue to rise on these shores too. Concerns about the most recent consumer price index report put the jitters in traders that knocked the wind out of the sails of the stocks market. The year-over-year CPI rose 5.3% over its level last August, and the core CPI is up 4% over the same period. It's a slight decrease, blah, blah, blah. U.S. consumer price increases at the slowest pace in 6 months in August. However, those figures ignore the volatile food and energy components of the market. Yeah. Benchmark crude oil now trades above $75 a barrel, or more than 45% above where it started this year. And analysts warn that a tightening oil market could prompt further gains. Average retail gasoline is up 50%. The situation is most alarming in natural gas, which many consumers rely on to power and heat their homes, at over $5 per million BTU. The benchmark Henry Hub natural gas prices are more than twice as high as a year ago at an annualized rate equal to $109 billion increase to consumers. Gas shortages in Europe and Asia are drawing more U.S. gas abroad as exports of liquefied natural gas, exacerbating market tightness here despite America's vast gas reserves. The EIA says that natural gas exports are up 41% from a year ago. So, energy prices are going up. From CNN Business, energy crisis could force more UK factories to close. Dateline London, British companies that produce, and these are just minor things, like steel, paper, glass, cement, ceramics, and chemicals. Little, minor things. You don't need any of these. Say they will be forced to close factories or pass on rising costs to the consumer unless the UK government provides relief from soaring energy prices. War, at its most basic level, is a game of resources. Unless the UK government provides relief from soaring energy prices. The industries, which are major users of natural gas and electricity, are reeling from a meteoric increase in wholesale energy prices that could continue deep into the winter. UK companies are being made less competitive compared to international rivals that have received help from their governments. I swear I can read English, just not so much today. It's not an idle threat. Just 3 weeks ago, Britain's food industry was brought to the brink by the closure of factories producing most of the country's CO2. The reason? Soaring natural gas prices. As we talked about, they need that CO2 for the slaughtering of animals, which leads to meat shortages, which also tie into labor shortages, they say caused by Brexit, but a lot of it has to do with the fact that certain people won't do certain things that certain governments are mandating. Elsewhere in this article, check this out. UK wholesale electricity prices surged from £50 per megawatt hour, which is still a lot, in April, to as much as £2,500 per megawatt hour in September. That's a 50x increase. 50x increase. 5,000%. According to UK Steel, which described the increase as astronomical. I would agree. And remember, it's just steel. It's not important. We don't need any of that. Because, we're all going to have green energy, and we're going to sit around, and we're going to sit in our circle, and we're all going to weave hemp clothing from now on, and rope, and other natural fibers that are going to do away with man-made materials. Whatever you say, dude. By the way, as somebody who's put up a bevy of wind turbines in a former life, and lots of solar panels as well. Thousands of kilowatts, megawatts, and megawatts. 1,500 megawatts of wind I've personally laid hands on. The idea that these are green energy projects is ludicrous. Cement is the #1 polluter in the world, the production of cement when it comes to CO2 emissions. There's 660 cubic yards of concrete in the foundation of every wind turbine. Between 360 and 700, on an average 600, 650. Call it 660 cubic yards of concrete. Yeah, and there's several hundred pounds, 3, 4, 5, 6, 700 pounds of cement per cubic yard of concrete. The amount of steel, we're talking 240, 260 tons of steel in the tower that holds the turbine up. The rotor blades are made of steel and fiberglass. The nacelle, the box on top, is made of steel and fiberglass. All the electronics inside of it, you're using copper and large diameter copper. And the home runs, the circuits that run from the wind turbines back to the substation, they're all done with aluminum wiring. And aluminum pollutes at twice the rate that copper does when you smelt it. There's nothing green about it. There's nothing green about it at all. The break even for carbon neutral on the average wind turbine is 38 years. BT Dubs, they have a service life of 20 years. You do the math. We're 18 years in the hole, actual, for every turbine we stand up. It has nothing to do with being green. It has to do with the fact that the companies that are standing these up are energy companies. They're not renewable energy companies, they're energy companies. #1, 2, and 3 owners of renewables in the United States are British Petroleum, Dutch Shell, and ExxonMobil. Do you really think they care about Mother Earth? They do not. They are interested in federal subsidies and diversifying their income streams. They don't care one iota about clean energy. So the whole thing is a sham. Back to the article. UK natural gas prices have increased by roughly 425% so far this year. In early October, they were nearly 740% higher than the same period in 2020. Some businesses have seen their energy bills spiral 4 and even 8-fold, meaning an extra burden of millions of pounds a month, which simply cannot continue. These costs will inevitably have to be passed on to consumers, and consumers at a time when the cost of living is already increasing. Over here to Bloomberg.com. Do we still have a live stream? Incredible. We have a live stream. I appreciate y'all so much. Shalom to all the blue wrenches. Thank you to the 500 and some people that are in the chat. Y'all are super cool. I appreciate you. From Bloomberg.com, U.S. coal is rebounding under Biden like it never did with Trump. U.S. utilities are on track to burn 23% more coal this year as the global energy crisis lifts demands for fossil fuels. Now, this is from Bloomberg, so you can... everything we read, we have to discern that there is a bias inherent in the information that we're receiving. And that's fine. I mean, we've looked at CNN, Forbes, CNN, and now Bloomberg. If you're one of those people, it's like, I don't read articles unless they come from Fox News. Hey, whatever floats your boat, homeboy. Everybody has a bias. And if you're afraid of a little cognitive dissonance because your own thoughts and feels aren't strong enough to withstand the bias of Bloomberg, you should probably work on that. The point here is to be aware of it. October 12 from Bloomberg. That was yesterday, by the way. Donald Trump vowed to revive the coal industry, but it's President Joe Biden who's seeing a big comeback of the dirtiest fossil fuel. U.S. power plants are on track. By the way, carbon sequestration is an awesome thing, and it works. And coal, yes, is it a polluter? For sure. Is it nearly as bad as it has been? No. I do think mountaintop removal to get to coal seams is abysmal, and there's better ways to do that. But y'all like cheap energy, right? Coal represents 52% of the United States production capacity. 52%. over half of it. So, shout out to West Virginia. Appreciate y'all. U.S. power plants are on track to burn 23% more coal this year, the first increase since 2013, despite Biden's ambitious plan to eliminate carbon emissions from the power grid. Because you can have all the best laid plans, and if they're founded in nonsense, it doesn't matter. The rebound comes after consumption by utilities plunged 36% under Trump, who slashed environmental regulations in an unsuccessful effort to boost the fuel. Shut up, Bloomberg. That's going to increase emissions at a time when Biden and other world leaders prepare to gather in Scotland in a few weeks, hoping to reach a deal on curbing fossil fuels in a last-ditch effort to save the world from climate change. To save the world from climate change. I don't know if you've looked around, but there's lots of other things currently that the world needs saved from rather than climate change. Additionally, as we discussed earlier, there are certain bad actors, particularly on the left end of the political spectrum, who have now decided that it is 100% the time to begin using violence to advance their climate change agenda. They don't want climate change. They don't want fossil fuels, and they are totally okay with blowing up pipelines, derailing trains, and worse to advance their agenda. So look for a potential uptick in that as this continues, as coal consumption continues to grow under Biden. And one could argue that we don't have laissez-faire, free-range capitalism, free market capitalism anymore. And you're probably correct because of the level of governmental involvement, specifically in utilities at this point. The market wants what the market wants. It wants more power, and you can't make more power quickly enough as primary generation by standing up more turbines and more solar panels on a utility scale. You can for your home. You can for small business. You can for light industrial and agricultural. Not on the grid scale because it doesn't have the on-demand capabilities that fossil fuels and nuclear have, again, because they generate steam and they're really, really good at it. You want to make more power, you make more steam. You shovel more coal into the furnace, it gets hotter, makes more steam, you make more power. So, as the world emerges from the coronavirus pandemic, reopening economies are driving a huge rebound for power demand. But natural gas is in short supply, creating shortfall. Is it? Wait a minute, we just heard that the United States and Russia have massive reserves of natural gas. But natural gas is in short supply, creating shortfalls at a time when wind and hydro have been unreliable in some regions. Most regions, including all of Europe currently and most of America currently. Again, utility scale, and you have to in your mind separate utility scale from personal use, okay? Europe and Asia have been hit the worst with skyrocketing markets, blackouts in places like India, power shortages in China, and the threat of outages in other countries. Energy prices are also soaring in the U.S., though not to the same extremes. And so coal production and coal demand are up. And that is an indicator for us because A, it runs counter to the current agenda, the talking points of the Joseph Robinette Biden Jr. administration, as well as it will has the potential to agitate far-left activists. Now, China, over here from Reuters.com, by Miyu Zhu and Shivani Singh, China liberalizes coal-fired power pricing to tackle energy crisis. So rather than state mandating the regulation of energy, which they have been doing for a long time, they're now opening this up pseudo into the private sector in China. Beijing Dateline 12 October from Reuters. China said on Tuesday it will allow coal-fired power plants to charge some customers market-driven prices for electricity as a worsening energy crisis persuades authorities to rush through their boldest reform to the power sector in decades. Responding to shortfalls in power generation brought on by shortages and record high prices for coal, the government has taken a range of steps to boost coal production and manage electricity demand at industrial plants. To help power companies pass on the high costs of coal, the National Development and Reform Commission, NDRC, said that all electricity generated by coal-fired plants will be priced via market trading in an orderly manner from 15 October. It also instructed commercial and industrial users to buy direct from the market or via agents over the grid as soon as possible. A worsening power crunch has forced production curves across industries such as cement, steel, and aluminum, or aluminium, as some of y'all across the pond say, dampening the outlook for China's economy. It's also important to understand that China is the #1 producer of cement in the world. And to make cement, you mine gypsum, you crush it into powder, you put it in a kiln, you heat it with natural gas, you spin the kiln at about a 30-degree angle, and what goes in tumbles around in there as crushed gypsum, comes out the other end as Portland cement. And it is an incredibly polluting process. You're cooking gypsum with natural gas. The off-gassing from that is absurd. But China is the #1 producer of cement in the world. And so if availability from China for things like cement becomes an ongoing issue, and remember, it's brought over here via cargo ships from China to the United States, where we already have a backlog for receivership of those that freight coming in. Even construction projects, you're going to see the cost, ever-increasing construction cost projects, coupled with the increasing inflation, the devaluation of the U.S. dollar. In short, the cost of everything is going up. It's going to continue to go up. At what point do we hit financial insolvency? I don't know. When the market says so, when people decide, when Susie Homemaker, whose husband has a 38 5-shot pocket revolver tucked in the sock drawer, decides that she doesn't have the money to buy bread from the grocery store anymore, and or there's no bread to buy from the grocery store anymore, and she decides she's gonna not watch her kids starve to death for the 3rd day in a row, and she's gonna go get some somehow, then I think we're going to see a leveling of market forces, because at some point the consumer, i.e. us, has decided we literally cannot withstand the onslaught of this devaluation and these supply chain logistics anymore. So a defense strategy for us against those things is to be as prepared as possible. The whole reason the main channel is called Bear Independent is because we want to be as independent from the fragile system as possible. And we're starting to see, much like when somebody suffers hypovolemic shock due to a loss of blood, they go through stages of shock, right? We're starting to see the beginning stages of shock here, not just locally, not just regionally or nationally in the United States, but around the world. And that, of course, is an indicator, again, because war, at its most basic level, is a game of resources. When a country decides that the lives that it has to throw at the problem are not as valuable at the resources they gain if they solve the problem, you get war. War is a diplomacy by any other means, right? And so when negotiations break down, we can't talk to each other. I'm not willing to talk to you about trading you or selling you some of my stuff. I decide I can't live without that stuff. I'm going to go get it. It's why we see a lot of border skirmishes and territorial issues around the world right now as well. Some of these things are dipping the toe in the water of determining responses of certain world powers. Some of these things are proxy wars. Some of these things are just the beginning signs of that hypovolemic shock situation around the world when it comes to supply chain and energy crisis. So we want to be paying attention to that as well. I think, my own personal 2 cents, the United States would do well to partner with India. Remember, India and China had that border issue a few months ago. It's still ongoing, but it's not as hot as it had been. I think the United States would do well to partner with the billion people of India. A, it's a gigantic market for our exports. B, they do produce things. C, they're literally on China's doorstep. Would China see that as an act of aggression? Of course they would, but China sees everything as an act of aggression. So if you have India to the southwest of mainland China, then you have Taiwan to the east of mainland China, then you have our protectorates and people we're aligned with or in allegiance to the south and southeast of China and those island nations down there. You've got Japan as well. If we were to come to a hot war with China, which is likely going to happen by 2025, that at least gives us a good foothold in the region to operate our forces from our air forces, our marine littoral combat regiments, the Navy, so forth and so on. So, and China, as we're seeing here in these articles, is at least somewhat struggling with the same types of things that we are, a lack of resources. And much like that soccer mom whose kids haven't eaten in 3 days becomes desperate due to a lack of resources, nations and nation states will become desperate over time due to a lack of resources as well. And they will eventually lash out in what they perceive to be their own best interest. So that's why we're paying attention to things like this. Not just because your energy crisis, your energy costs are going up and are going to continue to go up in the micro, but they have an overarching macro effect on our threat indicators as well. So that's the brief for today. We still got a live stream? Heck yeah, we got a live stream. Look at all these beautiful people, 636 people. The chat's just flying by. I appreciate y'all. Let's talk about Refuge Medical real quick. For those who don't know, this is my company. I own it. I operate it with several awesome brothers and sisters whom I love. And we are based in faith. The mission statement of Refuge Medical is to save lives while in service to the Father's kingdom and experiencing the abundance of His provision and blessing. We've saved 26 lives to date with these kits in just under 2 years. We're incredibly proud of that. And the vast majority of our kits are handmade, made in America, and guaranteed forever. And if you can find a better kit, let me know, and I will review it. But thus far, we've not found one. We've got all kinds of first aid kits here, everything from individual first aid kits for yourself to be used on you. You got the Bear Fac, which is the thing that started it all, the wound care bucket, the small of the back kit, which rocks, Cub Pro, which is a rip-away kit, the Bare Minimum, the Adventure Kit. Adventure Kits are in stock. I know many of y'all have been pining for the return of the Adventure Kit. The Adventure Kit handles everything from boo-boos to broken bones to bullet holes, okay? So you've got SAM splinting in here. You've got the entire contents of a Bear Fac for dealing with the March algorithm, massive bleeding, airway, respiratory, circulation, head injury, hypothermia, everything else. You've got literal from band-aids to sutures and steri-strips in here, SAM splints, medical instruments, scalpels, duct tape, the whole nine. So the Adventure Kit is in stock. Many of y'all have asked about it. Here it is. You can get it. What else? We've got a few of the limited edition pink Bear Facs left, and so if you're looking for a gift for that rugged lady in your life for the winter/fall holiday season, maybe consider a limited edition pink camo Bear Fac. When they're gone, they're gone. These will never happen again. We had somebody recently who contacted us and said something to the effect of, how do you expect somebody, an average working man on an average working man's salary to be able to afford one of these? I'll tell you this. I'm unapologetic about the price. We have gone out of our way to not raise our prices during the global pandemic, and I promise you our prices have gone up significantly. We already weren't making much on these things. Our prices have gone up significantly. TACMed Solutions, which makes the soft T, tourniquet, and several of the pressure bandages that we use and several other components, their costing has doubled. The SWAT T, the cost for the SWAT T has doubled. Recon Medical, their stuff has gone up anywhere from 40% to 100%. North American Rescue, their costs have gone up. Everybody's costs are going up, and we are going out of our way to not do that to you so that we can maintain as much of an affordability stature for you as possible. By the way, if you use promo code BearNation, You get free shipping, so that'll help. And if you're on Patreon, use your promo code. It's in the description. That'll get you a certain percentage off this purchase. Now, the other thing I'll say is if you do a side-by-side comparison between the Bearfac and any other kit of similar capability, they're the same. And so if you're carrying a firearm that costs you several $100s, why you wouldn't spend a couple $100s on a kit that's handmade, made in America, guaranteed forever, has already saved 26 lives confirmed in the last 2 years, exceeds military specification, and has everything in it you need to work the March algorithm. Why you wouldn't spend a couple $100 on that is beyond me. That being said, I understand that we are, again, a tightening of resources. We've hit a certain point in our American history where right now things are not what they used to be. And so if you can't afford one of our kits, I don't recommend you go out of your way to buy one of our kits. But I would say save until you can. I honestly believe they're the best kits on the market. They're phenomenal. They're well made. If you're unhappy with it, which has happened twice in the thousands of orders that we've sent out, and bless y'all for supporting our small business. If you're unhappy with it, let us know and we'll make it right. This is the SOB kit here. $200, comes in these cool colors, all the cool guy colors, Ranger Green, Coyote, multicam, and black. Weighs as much as one loaded AR magazine, and it's got everything you need inside of it. You got the inner pouch, the outer pouch, Gen 7 cat tourniquet, hyphen chest seals, combat gauze, flat duct tape, nasopharyngeal airway, compressed bandage, gloves, compressed gauze, antiseptic towelettes, and a permanent marker. It's awesome. And you can add add-ons, including a decompression needle to this if you want. So that's refugemedical.com. That's us. We're really proud of the work that we do. If you're looking for individual components, you can find them here at the store as well. And again, we are doing our absolute best to be able to provide you the best pricing that we can and still make a few bucks so that I can pay the people that I love and keep the lights on. And then when it comes to training, okay, I got my kit. How do I use it? You can go to refugetraining.com, or if you're at Refuge Medical, you can click this medical training button and it'll take you to this page, refugetraining.com. There are a lot of classes up right now. The Essential Responder in Dallas, which is the level 1, 2, and 3, which is Stop the Bleed, CPR, AED, Tactical Emergency Casualty Care, and Force on Force, all rolled together in one 2-day package. It's $1,100. I would defy you to find the quality of training and the depth of training that you will receive over the course of those 2 days for that price anywhere else from any other instructor. And I feel that same way about any of these other classes as well that we have. We've got a level 1, 2, and 3 in Salt Lake City, Utah. Now, listen, Utah and Dallas, and really all of you, everywhere these classes have been placed where the Bear Nation has been clamoring the loudest for these classes. And so we've listened to y'all and put classes within your general AO, within your general area of operations. We've gone out on a limb here and we've waged our bets that if we provide this training in your area, then the Bear Nation will show up and support our small businesses. And in certain places, y'all are not doing that. Birmingham, Alabama, I'm kind of disappointed in you because y'all were the squeakiest wheel on the school bus and we greased you up real good, and now it's just crickets. There's like nobody from Birmingham, Alabama. I've got a level 1 in Birmingham. If you're in Birmingham or near Birmingham, a reasonable drive from Birmingham, I'd love it if you'd come to class. You know, Salt Lake City, I don't know how many of y'all have clamored for a class in Salt Lake City. So not only do you have an essential responder in Salt Lake City, you've got a level 1 in Salt Lake City as well. Dallas, the essential, the level 1, 2, and 3, as well as a level 1 class, which is the Stop the Bleed. Charlotte, level 1, Stop the Bleed. Orlando, Stop the Bleed. Phoenix, Arizona, you guys are another market that have just been screaming, Bear, you got to come to Phoenix. Hey, we're coming to Phoenix. Wichita, Kansas, a level 1. And then we've got the level 3s up here in Atlanta, Georgia, and in Charlotte, North Carolina, which is Tactical Emergency Casualty Care, which builds on everything you learn in the level 1, and then implements Not only do you have to treat yourself, you have to triage and treat other casualties as well, and you have to make go, no-go decisions for use of force using simunitions and blue guns while getting shot at and shooting bad guys and providing medical care and getting off of the X, and it's an absolute blast. It's a phenomenal training, and that's available currently in Georgia, in Atlanta, Georgia, Charlotte, North Carolina, and Phoenix, Arizona. And so we've put these classes out here for you. I would greatly appreciate it if you've got the time and the money that you'd come see us, because we listen to you when we put these classes in. Stalwart Peacekeeper, who's the Director of Operations for Refuge Training, has been inundated with emails from so many of you saying, hey, could you please put a class here? Well, we've listened. And now that we've put these classes here, I'd appreciate it if you'd come to class. That would help us greatly. And again, it helps me feed the people that I love. And frankly, you're going to learn life skills that you as a civilian don't have the opportunity to learn otherwise. We've had many people, military, EMS, fire, public safety, law enforcement, emergency management, who have received law enforcement specific or military specific training in these things, come to our classes for the civilian sector for y'all and say, this class is freaking awesome. This is the best training I've ever gotten, period, in this type of instruction. You guys are killing it. And that's because our instructors are law enforcement, our Army MPs, our nurses, our highway patrol, our SWAT medics, our paramedics have done all of this stuff. You know, these are nationally accredited classes, by the way. So you're going to get training hours if you're in public safety. They're NAEMT 2021 updated. They're post-certified, nationally post-certified for training hours. They conform to the Committee on TCCC guidelines for tactical emergency casualty care. It's a phenomenal class. It's not a throwaway. It's not a death by PowerPoint while you hold a tourniquet. They're all hands-on. It's all an incredible amount of training. And so I would implore you, if you need medical training, please consider refugetraining.com. Please come see us. And with that, we still actually have some people in the chat. I appreciate you guys very mucho for hanging out with us today. And when I get done with you here, I'm going to pound a bottle of water, shoulder my ruck, and go for a little walk through the woods. Thank you for hanging out with us. Again, please pay the fee. Share this out to somebody you think needs to see it. And as always, blessings to the patrons. We could not and would not do this show without you. Frankly, I have no interest in playing in the YouTube sandbox anymore. We're here because of the patrons. And you can find us at patreon.com. Search for Bear Independent, or there's a link in the description. Always, it's $5 a month. I'm unapologetic about it. There's over 1,500 videos on Patreon that have never seen the light of day. That's a mini EMT class. In some cases, it's better than EMT class, homie. There's 1,500 plus videos that have never seen the light of day on Patreon. All exclusive content. Oh, and yes, all of the first aid kits are HSA approved and FSA approved, by the way. So if you've got HSA or FSA burning a hole in your pocket, feel free to make good use of those funds at refugemedical.com. Bless y'all, Bear Nation. Y'all are badass. I'll see you soon. Shalom.